Hello and welcome to Unleashed. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I'm delighted to be here today with Maria Isabel Rios, who is a principal in the David A. Fields Consulting Group. She was at McKinsey for 5 years and has been an independent consultant for 20 years. Her focus now is on advising independent consultants and boutique consulting firms on growth and running their practice. Maria, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Will. I'm delighted to be here with you.
So, Maria, we agreed on a topic of how to make your firm work for you, and so that you don't work for your firm. But beyond that, you haven't clued me in yet. I didn't get the inside scoop on how you think about that topic. So lead on. Tell me about how to make your firm work for you.
So this work is really dear to our hearts because we find that firm leaders, which we will work with day in and day out, are often immersed in working in their firm and in service to their firm, in service to growing their firm, to making their firm successful. And there's a better way to be a firm leader, which is to also make your firm work for you so that it creates more delight for consultants, better results. Your firm gets the leaders what they need and a feeling of success and joy in addition to meeting priorities and goals.
All right, well, tell me more about that.
So there's a mental shift, right? When we set goals and strategic priorities for a firm, we think, okay, this is where I want my firm to go in the next 2 to 3 years, how big I want it to be. This is the model that I want to work on. We often forget to think of the element that made us want to found a firm in the first place, makes us want to lead a firm in the first place, which is what does it give us that a corporate position or a position at a consulting firm as an employee will not get us. And part of finding that and exploring that, framing around that, is how we find ways to make our firm work for us. How do you make your firm be a value added to you? And all the stress and implications of owning a firm, right? How do you make it so that it adds value to your life and it brings that additional element of success into the picture? So an example is folks say, okay, I want my firm to net me roughly X $100,000 a year, right? Say 500,000 or 600,000. There's a lot of elements and ways to make that $500,000 in a way that are either more satisfying to you or less satisfying to you, that contribute more to your life or less to your life. And part of what we're encouraging folks to think through is what would bring delight and success into their life. And each person has their own formula, right? My formula looks very different than yours, Will. I can imagine looks different than Margarita's and anyone who's listening. So what's that formula? And that formula is made out of 2 parts. It's a combination of looking at your consulting firm purpose, mission, your values, what you really want your consulting firm to be, and defining really tightly your consulting firm's intentions. So what is the goal of your firm as it relates to you? Does that make sense?
It does. Let's make this concrete. Perhaps you could share a sanitized example of a situation where you worked with one of your clients, a leader of a consulting firm, helping him or her. Maybe they were struggling. They're feeling, I'm just working all the time. It's not any fun anymore. And you help them kind of figure out their purpose or intention and kind of redesign their life and their firm so that their firm work for them.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do that. So let's imagine we're speaking with what we call a transition firm. So a firm making, as a firm, roughly $1 million a year. So there's a couple of folks involved in delivery. on the road to being a boutique, not quite there yet, right? There's a couple of support folks. And the firm leader in this example is setting their goals for the next 3 years. And so we start talking about it. We have a 4-part consulting firm model. So we look at what's the strategy, how are they going to win engagements, how are they going to create value, and what infrastructure support they need. And in the middle of all of this, there's the question of the firm leader saying, look, if I get all these things, I can't complain. And part of our reaction is, wait, there's a better way. We don't want to get here so that you can't complain. We want to get here so that you're going from a negative positive to a resounding, yes, this is fantastic. So first step in this road is we look at the firm leader's personal intentions. What are their intentions for themselves? What do they want, right? In terms of family, in terms of their professional life, in terms of their friendships, their community, in terms of their wellness and their well-being, and other areas, right, that they name where they want to have personal intentions. And here, the first kind of tip, as you're going through it, and if you're listening, you're thinking, how do I draw my personal intentions? Is to go from a general, oh, I want to spend time with my family. Turn that into a very specific, I want to spend my 1 weekend day, uninterrupted family time, 0 work, every week for the next 52 weeks. The shift from a general, more time with family, to a very specific goal, uninterrupted, 1 weekend day per week, is very empowering, right? Starts making it specific that we can act upon, right? So in this case, that was one of the examples that came up in conversation. Another example is we said, okay, I want my firm, I want to be financially successful. Okay, what does it mean? How much do you need to receive from your firm? And where does it go? And in this person's case, they decided that for them, part of the formula of being financially successful is that they will be able to contribute 10% of what came home into their retirement account. Again, very specific, right? We have a goal. They work with the rest of the 90%, the 10% goes into a retirement account. We go through this in each of the metrics of personal intention. At the end, we had a very specific list with 35 items. Now, as good consultants that we all are, we know those are too many. And so the next exercise we do is say, okay, for the next year or 2 years, what are the 3 items that are going to be relentlessly prioritized? No matter what, no compromises. It doesn't mean we don't work on all the other 22. What are the 3 that this person is prioritizing, right? So they ended prioritizing a no work, hands off the keyboard, 3-week vacation during the year. They ended up prioritizing 1 morning out volunteering at their children's school every week. And they also ended up prioritizing meal management in a way that every meal that they would eat during the weekdays will be a healthy meal, right? So their list looks different than my list. May look different than your list will. The idea is, what is that prioritized list of personal intentions?
And then beyond just sort of asking the question, what are your intentions with your family? What are your intentions with your friends? What are your intentions with your, finances? Beyond that, any other ways that you had, like secret sauce of surfacing these, of getting people to reflect?
So I think naming what areas of your life are important to you is part of the secret sauce. And then looking at what surfaces over a period of time as opposed to one sit down.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these things, for a lot of us, we benefit from the extra introspection, from saying, I want to sit with this? Is this what I really want for myself for this year? What would really bring me joy? And we're not going to Marie Kondo this and say, drop everything that doesn't bring you joy. That's not the formula in this case, right? But still, sit with it over time. Come back to it. See if the list looks anything similar than the first draft, or if anything has changed. Fair?
That's good. Thank you. All right.
All right. So now our consultant is armed with the list of the 3 items that they prioritize, which is step 1 of this exercise, right? We went through it, identify the personal intentions, prioritize them. Now we move on to step 2, which is the intersection with the firm. The first element here is to define for the next, say, 3 years or 5 years, what do you want your firm to bring out and do for you? And there's generally 5 models here. And I can go from kind of more easily achievable to hardest to achieve.
Let's go through it. Yeah. What are the 5 models?
All right. So one of the models is you want your firm to provide a certain lifestyle for you. So the firm is a vehicle for the firm leader to do something else. So, for example, we have a client, the purpose of and the intention of their firm is to provide enough time so that they finish writing their 3rd book and can go on a book tour. We have another firm leader who supports a nonprofit organization out of Africa. And the purpose of the firm is to generate enough revenue on a sustainable basis so that 1, they can fund their nonprofit, and 2, they can spend as much time working on their nonprofit as they can. So 2 examples of lifestyle firms, right? A 3rd example, perhaps more common, is somebody who says, my family's at a stage where I don't want to spend 60 or 80 hours a week working. I want to spend 25 hours a week in work, and the rest of the time I want to support my family. So 3 very different colors of lifestyle-oriented firms. The second is your firm is an ATM, and you want it to regularly generate cash to support you. Right? That's it. You put effort and consulting, good consulting work in, you get cash out of it. An evolution of that is the 3rd model, where you have a growing ATM, meaning that it's not only generating cash, but every year it generates more cash than the year before. And what and how you think about an ATM, it's very different than how you would think about the 4th and 5th model, which are asset-based, which is when you think, okay, I want my firm to be an asset. In the ATM models, cash comes out. In the asset models, you use some of the cash you generate to build and grow your firm so that it has more intrinsic value. So model number 4 is you're growing your asset. Model number 5 is you're getting your asset ready for a cash out, for a transaction. One kind of real life example we see here, because we work with clients over many years, is the firm intentions will change with time. So, and another example, another client we're working with right now, for the last 4 years, their model has been, I want to build an asset. Now, their asset, has a certain intrinsic value, and they made a shift in their model. And for the next 2 or 3 years, they want their firm to be growing ATM. And so we prioritize different work in their firm, right? The way they approach decisions, such as hiring, training, who do they have, how do they deliver, where do they spend their time, changes once they decided of their mothership.
I would propose a sixth version or model, which could be orthogonal to some of the other ones that you've listed. So not necessarily distinct, but there is a model where the firm is a vehicle to deliver a certain impact or change that you want to create in the world, which I'm thinking of as distinct from finding a certain lifestyle of someone who wants to create a certain impact, whether that is, moving the needle on climate change, or whether it's, impacting the way that that people live and work, right? Or, helping a certain, solve a certain problem. So that would probably be potentially be a more ambitious, but not necessarily in conflict with the other models. It could be along the way with building an asset, but a slightly different set of drivers or things that you might do.
Absolutely. One nuance in what you just shared, Will, that it's very important is, do you, for example, impact climate change by delivering more climate change work? That's one, climate change related work. That's one way to impact that. Or do you impact climate change mostly outside the boundaries of your firm, and then it fits differently within the models? But absolutely, there is certainly a purpose, kind of higher purpose, if you want, driven firm example in here as well.
Yeah. I mean, some people would be motivated to actually build kind of an ongoing institution as opposed to the more purely financial aspect of building an asset that you can sell. All right. So continue on. Tell us a little bit about how, you would work with someone differently depending on which of those models they're going after. Let's say, if someone is working to, particularly, maybe talk about the distinction between someone who's interested in building an ATM versus someone who's interested in building an asset. Perhaps talk about the distinction there and what sorts of different activities someone should be focusing on if they want to build an asset versus building an ATM.
Beautiful. So the distinction is very important because, of course, we all want a measure of cash out and a measure of value contributed as well. But choices will often put those priorities in conflict. And that's why it's important to know which one we're leading. If somebody wants to maximize cash, then when they think about staffing, when they think about the type of projects they get and how they deliver them, cash is a consideration, right? So do we have more leeway in a bigger project to perhaps bring somebody else in? How much net profit you make out of that project becomes a consideration because the model is to favor cash. So we want to look at cash at every turn or at every major decision the firm makes, right? You're going to hire somebody. Well, what's your model, right? What's ultimately going to cost you to hire somebody? And how does that contribute to your ATM desire? Now, part of what that results in is not, and we're not advocating for folks prioritizing money over anything else, is the new, certain decisions. When you bring people in, how much do you invest in priorities, trainings, knowledge building that will bear fruit years in the future and not right now shifts when you're thinking about an ATM model. So it's not a soulless model in any way. Just, okay, we want to make sure, we want to protect. What's your ATM withdrawal number for this year? We want to protect that ATM withdrawal number and then build beyond that, if you will. So that's one example, right? For somebody who's looking at cash. And decisions are often involving, okay, I am perhaps more involved in delivery than I would have been in an asset model. Or I bring in folks that are more senior because I want them focused on delivery, knowing that they're not part of my permanent team, right? And I build a subcontractor model, which works great in an ATM situation, for example. So 2 considerations to keep on your radar on the ATM model. If we're looking at building an asset, we want to look at an extended timeline of what creates permanence and value. And for young boutique firms, that often involves investing in growing more rainmakers for your firm, more folks that can bring in revenue. We know that directly impacts the value of a firm. When all the revenue generation relies on one person, the value of the firm is impacted, right? So growing for the long term, you perhaps invest more in systems, in infrastructures, in creating stronger processes that allow folks to come and be a part of your firm. If you're building an asset, you invest more in knowledge development and in knowledge sharing. And you also address visibility with a longer term view. Meaning, I'm going to participate at an XYZ conference, and I know the payoff from my relationships may take 3, 4, 5 years to come. And that's okay. Because I'm really expanding my network. I'm really building stronger relationships, and there's a longer term view. Now, for those of you who may be scratching your heads and saying, wait a minute, but I need to eat, right? As I do all these things, that's part of why we work on this on an ongoing basis. And it's not a one-time exercise. Because yes, of course, we all need to eat and meet our certain financial goals as you build an asset as well.
Yeah, and to build on what you said, to build the asset, in addition to adding rainmakers to the firm, the ideal asset would be not about hiring some experienced partners to come in who already have a set of relationships and can leverage those, but the ideal asset would be develop rainmakers from within who are almost frankly replaceable or interchangeable, where it's not so much dependent on that person, but more about the systems and tools and technology that you've built so that people are coming for your firm and not for that particular, partner who is selling the work, because you have some kind of unique proprietary technology or tool or database or access that your firm uniquely can provide so that you can, grow those, people, and that the relationships are ideally more embedded in your systems, in your CRM system and so forth, than in just strictly in the personal relationships, right, of those senior rainmakers.
Exactly. Well, your point is super important. In the asset model, the relationships are the firm's relationships. In the ATM model, you can be very happily having the relationships be individual relationships. And that's both relationships with experts and with prospects and your market and clients. So if it's clear that, yes, I have a relationship with you, but in reality, I have a relationship with Umbrix Veritas, that's more an asset model, right? Whereas I have a relationship with you for a particular project and it's delightful to both of us, but it walks out with me when I walk out of the relationship. That's more akin to an ATM model. And that's okay. Both models can be wildly successful, very fulfilling, right? The key here is deciding as a firm leader, what is your aspiration for your firm? And then how long does it take to get there? Neither of the models are necessarily ones that can be, if you want, seen in action where a difference is noticeable immediately. They require work over time because each decision builds on the prior one.
Yeah. Let's talk about going in the opposite direction, closer to model A, where can you share any examples where you've worked with a client that says, oh, I'm overworked, I'm just working like crazy, I'm not really getting out of this what I want in terms of running my own practice, and perhaps you help them pare back a bit and pare some things away and help them realize what you really want is you want something to fund a certain lifestyle and help them dial back from working crazy hours to 25 or 30 hours a week. And that might have changed their business development approach or changed some of the investments they were making.
Absolutely. So oftentimes when we haven't thought about this, right? And people come into independent consulting. They either come from industry or they come from consulting firms. We have an embedded model in mind that it's somewhat an extension of the model we were living in before, where we've said, you know what, no more of this. I'm going to do exactly the opposite, right? There's an incoming model in mind. We find that oftentimes that model says, I work many hours, therefore I make a lot of money, and therefore I am successful. And shifting that paradigm, when someone, for example, says, okay, I'm reaching the point where I'm burned out. One of the elements that guides us to that, a need for that shift, is how much kind of happiness is the firm life bringing to the firm leader. We tell all of our clients something that it's how we approach the work, which is we serve our clients. Their firms are their vehicle for success. But in general, unless we do work with large boutique firms, we're serving the firm owner, who is the person who hires. And sometimes that leads to a very hard conversation of saying, look, you're not taking care of yourself, right? This is the 5th time or the 4th time or the 20th time that we've had great news in hand, and somehow they feel disappointing or overwhelming, right? Because now I got to deliver on this piece of work that I just sold. So how do people shift? To make the shift, we want to say, okay, what's the basics of your personal intentions, right? Going back to the very first start of our conversation. And then we walk it backwards. Say, how can we achieve this not needing so much of you? So do you either take larger projects or projects with larger margins? Or do you create more sustainability in your pipeline so that you know you reliably working less are going to have a pipeline that gives you a certain volume of revenue for the year? Or do you strategically shift the model of how you deliver so there's less of the firm leader in delivery, meaning the delivery is still getting done at quality? What does that imply? What are you giving up in terms of your revenue share in favor of getting back hours of your life? So we basically design a map of, okay, where are all the tweaks and changes we're going to make? Which of these we can put in place today? Which of these we're going to put in place every time you propose a new project? And which of these we're going to put in place over time, because you either need to build a bench of consultants or shift the mixture of your network. You know, where do we need to make tweaks so that we have a sustainable firm that can deliver on that lifestyle?
I think you raise an important point, and we haven't even gotten into other sorts of, I mean, perhaps somewhat it fits into Model A, the certain lifestyle, but there are other directions that some people might uh, prioritize or be using their firm as a vehicle to get to, such as some people might want to, over time, build a reputation as a thought leader or in their space and want to build a career where they're getting speaking engagements or publishing books or teaching at a university, at a business school, or doing some kind of thought leadership creation, moving in that direction. Some people may want to create an online course and try to generate most of their revenue through products, which can't necessarily be done right away, but with some planning ahead. I do know consultants in the community of Umbrex who have, planned a progression and built nice revenue streams with some online classes, and in some cases ones that are asynchronous or do it yourself. And so I think the message to me from what you're saying is really be intentional about what you want. Just don't automatically take more and more projects and fill up your hours each week with paid work, but think about, what am I trying to get to 2 or 3 years from now, and then align your activities to get there.
And do you know, say you want to get to, we're starting today, right? And I'm 60 hours a week in delivery, and I want a model where I can deliver for 25 hours a week, God feed another 35 in this example back, and still make equivalent revenue. Do I know? Do I have the tools? Do I have the systems? Do I actually know how to go from point A to point B? And if not, then today is the right time to start thinking, what would I need to learn? How can I get curious about what this shift? Because the goals may be very clear, but the intermediate steps of how to get there may not be. And that's where, working on a plan and getting that expertise in how do you do it, maybe it's a partner, right? In the case of the person who has the products that sell asynchronous, right? The courses, the trainings, the systems, that it's an asynchronous selling. I imagine that took a lot of building in terms of an investment, in terms of knowledge building, in terms of design thinking, in terms of finding the right spot in the market. So there's the question, exactly like you said, Will, where do you want to get? And also, what tools and capabilities do you need to get there, right? Do you need to know how to delegate better? And do you have tools that allow you to do that in a way that doesn't make you second guess yourself? Do you need expertise in how to build a product? Do you have the tools to do that? Do you need to widen your network in universities so that you build a parallel reputation there? And how is it compatible with the work you're doing in your firm?
I like to ask two questions when after someone has gone through your exercise of really defining their intentions that you talked about at the beginning of this episode, is ask yourself, okay, where do I want to be a year from now? And the second question is, what can I do this weekend to get some step towards that goal? So if you wanted to be a thought leader in 3 years, a year from now, you want to have a draft of a book, maybe this weekend you sketch out the table of contents, right?
Right.
If you want to be if you want to create a course, maybe a year from now you want to have the course launched. This weekend you can sketch out some ideas for the course. And if you wanted to really get superb at business development, then this weekend you could say, okay, let me get some books or podcasts on business development for small firms, or read The Irresistible Consultant's Guide to Winning Clients by David A. Fields.
Exactly. That's where we want you to start for sure, right?
Good place to start.
Absolutely good place to start. Without a doubt. So first invitation is take a time window, block a substantial time window. So take 4 hours of your time, go to a park, go to a cafe, go to a setting that it's not your office or your regular work environment, and that's not an airplane, because we all know, we think that's the best place to think, but it may not be. Right. Go to a place that's relaxing, that feels fun, that feels insightful, and that's different than your day to day. And spend the next 4 hours thinking about your personal intentions, your intentions for your firm. Come back to it, like you said, Will. What are you going to do this weekend? And also include in your mixture a form of listening, whether it's formal research or speaking with folks who have already done it, or speaking with folks who would be your potential targets for your book, or your potential readers, your ideal readers, right? What do people have in mind? Include always a form of listening. That will enrich your process of sifting through priorities, and it will help you clarify ideas.
Wonderful. Maria, where can people find out more about David A. Fields Consulting Group?
All right. So 2 suggestions. DavidAFields.com, of course, is our house, if you will, where you can find us online. Join us on Mondays, every Monday at 12:15 Eastern on LinkedIn. We take questions from consultants live. We answer the questions live. It's called 15 Minutes Consulting Best Practices. And if you want to create a recurring event in your calendar that will always take you to the right place, and you can join us at davidafields.com/Monday Live. That will take us to where we are on Monday. Submit your questions. That's how that program works.
And I also will recommend, and we'll include a link in the show notes, do sign up for David's weekly blog post. You can get those by email, and they're always insightful, and they have David's highly artistic stick figure drawings, which are a lot of fun. Maria, thanks so much for joining today and sharing some thoughts about how to make your firm work for you.
Thank you for having me, Will. It's been a pleasure.